Welcome everyone to today's webinar at Notes Code. Our topic today is high availability comes to monitoring, and the deepest traveler monitoring gets deeper. So we're going to do a lot of talking about monitoring on the Traveler server. Our presentation today is done by RPR Wyatt. Our presenters will be Jim Engel and Alan Forbes. Just a reminder before I turn the time over to Jim is that your attendance today enters you in to win the trip to the MWLUG conference in Atlanta in August. Or if you are the lucky winner, you can choose to either take the trip or win the Mac Pack, which is now a new Mac Pack with the Apple Watch, a MacBook Air, and the Apple TV.
Two awesome prizes, Scott.
That's right. Either or is a good win for you.
Yep.
Okay, so the before we get started, just a reminder: if you have questions as RPR Wyatt is doing the presentation, you can expand your GoToWebinar control panel and type in the question, and then at the end of the presentation, I can read those questions to Alan and Jim, and they can respond. Okay, Jim, I'm going to turn the time over to you. Alan, I'm going to get the screen over to you, and then Jim will get us started, and we'll be looking at your screen.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Scott, and I certainly look forward to meeting the lucky winner in August at the Midwest Users Group meeting. All righty. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We really do appreciate this. We know the internet is chock full of webinars, and we really appreciate you taking the time to attend ours today. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the webinar. Today's presentation will be by Alan Forbes, our Vice President of Product Development, and we'll focus on the comprehensive monitoring delivered by VitalSigns. This is the new three releases that you'll be seeing. There'll be an emphasis on presenting the latest information and capabilities impacting the traveler monitoring, which is a high interest to everybody these days. In addition, today's presentation will explore the new, and we feel very exciting, VitalSigns high availability, including load balancing and failover for the first time. So now, allow me to go ahead and introduce Alan, our presenter for today. Alan, if you would, please.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you, Scott. I think, Scott, you and I have done a bunch of webinars together in the past, but this is probably the hardest one I've ever had to put together because I have so much stuff that I can talk about today. I can't believe it. I spent most of yesterday. It really is a good problem to have. I'm so super excited. Of all the, the 20+ years I've been working in Domino, this is really probably the most significant advance I've had the pleasure to announce. So there's two things I'm going to talk about today. First, the easy one, and I use easy in quotes, the fact that VitalSigns is highly available. And then we're going to talk about some of the major advances that we made in IBM Traveler monitoring. So when it comes to highly available monitoring, or HA, our goal is to spread monitoring across multiple machines or multiple workstations, and that is to make it highly scalable and highly reliable. So as we've gotten ever larger enterprise accounts, they've asked for higher scalability, higher reliability. So in our implementation, we allow you to have any number of monitoring nodes. So obviously you need to have at least 2 or it's not HA, but you can have 3 or 4 or 5. And there's something called a load factor, which allows you to specify work allocation across nodes. If for some reason you have one of the machines is beefier than the other, you could say server A takes 70% of the work and server B takes 30% of the work, and it'll just dynamically work it out. Or if you have specific regions and you wanted to assign particular servers to specific nodes, you could say I want to do all the Domino servers in the West Coast data center from the West Coast monitoring station, and the same thing in the East Coast, or whatever. However you want to do it, it's very flexible. So the architecture is that the various monitoring nodes check in every 5 minutes or so, and if a node goes dead, the other nodes pick up seamlessly. So they'll pull from the SQL table what was the last status of the server, so it knows that it was low disk space or whatever. You shouldn't see any indication of the fact that it failed over. And the way we accomplish that is through a shared SQL backend. So even though you have multiple nodes, they're reading the configuration from a single SQL backend, and they're writing the results back into a single SQL backend. And if you want that to be, uber HA, you want your SQL backend to be HA as well. But that's actually a fairly common implementation that we found. There's also a single front end, so you're running IAS on one of the boxes. And if that happens to go down, the front end could conceivably disappear on you, but all the monitoring and the alerting and everything will continue to happen in the background. And some of the services, like primarily the alert service, runs on what we call the primary node, but it can hop across nodes. If the primary node goes down, another node will pick it up and say, oh, I noticed the alert service isn't running, let me run that. So I do love demos, so let me just switch over and show that before we go into the Traveler bit. What I'm looking at here is the VitalSigns configurator. The thing about HA is there really not a ton to show about it because it's all kind of, background plumbing kind of stuff. But you see that we have different types of license, and we have an HA edition. If there's any existing customers that are on the line here, you should know that as being on maintenance, you do get the upgrade to HA as part of your maintenance. If you wanted to actually see what's going on with HA and configure some of it, it's under here, under Setup and Security. There's HA settings and status. This particular setup here I have with 2 nodes. So this one is the primary node, and this is the secondary node. And you'll see as I jump from one of these grids to another, it will update the status below to tell me the state of the various services that are running. And down here, if you wanted to be particular about which servers were monitored by what particular node, you could say I want to make sure that this node monitors those servers, and you can assign it, and it just takes care of all of that stuff all automatically, which is cool. And this load factor doesn't have to add up to 100, but for me it's easier to think of 70-30 or 60-40 or whatever, but it just allocates the workload based on the sum of the numbers and then what each server's percentage is assigned to it. And the important thing here is that node alive or not, and when did it last check in? So switching back to my PowerPoint presentation, now we're shifting gears and talking about Traveler monitoring, which of course all of this stuff is now HA. With Traveler monitoring, our primary goal is to detect anything that could cause user unhappiness with Traveler and alert the right people immediately. Our secondary goal is to also collect information about the Traveler servers to provide insights into usage metrics, device statistics, etc. And unfortunately, given the time constraints, I don't think I'm going to even be able to demo any of that stuff because there's so much detection that we can do now. But maybe we'll do another webinar on that topic. So the goal is to avoid, detect and avoid potential Traveler problems. And I pared my list down to only 9 potential problems, and then I further pared it down to I'm only going to demo the top 5. And so the different things that can go wrong with Traveler include having insufficient HTTP threads, running in resource constraint mode and not knowing about it, having a hung Traveler servlet, having the Traveler status change from green to yellow or yellow to red. There's sometimes bandwidth or other struggles between the Traveler server and the mail servers where the Traveler server needs to reach out to get the user's mail file. If you're running Traveler in HA mode, you also could have problems with the back-end data store, whether that's Microsoft SQL Server or DB2. Number 7 is having a continually incrementing number of successful device synchronizations. Of course, the sort of the obvious of making sure that HTTP and the Traveler server tasks are up and running. And if you're looking to get device metrics, you need to make sure that you can get to the device's API. So I'm going to run through the top 5 as quickly as I can to get through as many of these things I can, because this is important stuff, I think. The number 1 thing that causes user unhappiness is by far running out of HTTP threads, having your server configured so that it has insufficient HTTP threads. And the vast majority, with a couple of exceptions, most mobile devices talk to Traveler via HTTP. Of course, IBM is working on using some of the native Apple push protocols and so forth, but for now, every device sync generally consumes an HTTP thread. And the maximum number of threads that HTTP can serve at any given moment is set in the server document for that particular server. And the default value for 64-bit servers is 400 threads. And IBM recommends that you have 1.2 times the number of devices for threads. And so you might think, well, 400 threads, that's a lot of threads, that should be enough. And when you initially set up a Traveler server, that's usually way more than you need. But what tends to happen is users start using Traveler, they get more devices, they get a new iPad Air for Christmas or whatever, and the devices multiply and the number of requests on HTTP multiplies accordingly. So what happens if you have insufficient HTTP threads? Well, the symptoms are rather unpleasant for the user. Apple devices are going to see a message on their device that says, cannot connect to the server, or it's just going to be slow. And if you have Android devices or the Windows phones, you're going to see error 503, server busy, which is even worse, in my opinion, because it just makes the end users nervous. And what's happening in the background is the server CPU is diverted into juggling HTTP sessions rather than doing device syncs. So it's constantly evaluating, okay, who's been waiting the longest, who can I drop, who can I add, and it's doing this kind of juggling stuff instead of doing the device syncs, and that's where the performance problems come in. The only way that you can know if you have enough HTTP threads is to know first how many devices you have, and second how many HTTP threads you have configured. So to figure out how many devices you have on the remote console, you type in a command, showstat traveler.push.devices.total, and it'll give you back a number. For example, let's say my Traveler server has 225 devices on it. In that case, IBM would recommend that you have at least 270 HTTP threads configured, because that is 1.2 times 225. So now to find out if you have enough HTTP threads, you type the command showstat HTTP workers, and a number comes back. And if the number came back is 300, this Traveler server will be in good shape in terms of HTTP threads. And if it had a number under 270, then you're probably going to experience problems. Now, the thing about this is the number of devices is not always static. They're multiplying in the night when you don't realize it. So this is an evaluation that you have to make on a fairly regular basis. The next thing, the number two problem, is when a Traveler server goes into constraint mode. And constraint mode is actually a feature that's built into Traveler, which is when the Traveler server detects that it's doesn't have enough system memory, or that it's using too many database connections, or some other thresholds that are built in there, it will go into constraint mode to try to free up resources. And when that happens, when it's into constraint mode, it'll finish the device syncs and the prime syncs that it's currently underway, but it will not start any new ones. And as far as the end user is concerned, the symptoms are the same as issue number 1 of HTTP threads, which is the can't connect to server and the 503 and the slow stuff. And that's another terrible thing. Well, the only way that you can know whether your Traveler server is running in constraint mode or not is to periodically query it with the stat request of showstat Traveler.Constraint.State. And that's a binary, so it'll either return a 1 or a 0. And if it's a 1, the server is in constraint mode, and if it's a 0, it is not in constraint mode. Now, how do you fix that? Well, ideally, the Traveler server will fix itself. So if it stops taking in new requests, ultimately the threads that it has ongoing will finish, and they'll release memory, and it will come out of constraint mode on its own. Other times, server restart is required, and the only way to know that is to just periodically, once you notice that it's in constraint mode, continue to ask and see if the problem goes away. Number 3 of common problems would be a hung Traveler servlet. And the Traveler servlet is actually part of the core of Traveler. It's not just for new device provisioning, although that's the only really visible part of it. So if your Traveler servlet is running fine, you would go into a web browser or with your mobile device and point it at the server's host name /Traveler, and it will prompt you for a username and password, and you'll get back something like this. And if all is well with the servlet, it'll say some variation of IBM Traveler is available. And if there's a problem with it, the message will be in red. And I've seen a couple of different messages there about access to mail files and other issues that could pop up. So that's something you want to check on periodically. The next one would be a change of state. And change of state is the Traveler server's self-assessment of itself. So, hey, Traveler server, are you dead? No, I'm not dead yet. I'm only yellow, but I'm red, or I'm green. So how do you know what the Traveler server's state is? To find out what the state is, you put in the command show stat Traveler.Status.State, and you'll get back something like this in the case of yellow, or it will be red or green. Green is good, obviously. So if it's yellow or red, obviously you want to know, well, why? So what's particularly exciting is beginning with Traveler 9.0.1.4, status reasons are now available in the Domino statistics table. And this is a feature that was added by IBM at our request, and I am eternally grateful. We've been pestering them for a couple of years. It made it to the top of the list, and I couldn't be more delighted to see that in there. Because previously, if you wanted to know the reasons, the only way you could find out was to go into Live Console and do tell Traveler status. And the problem with a Live Console is it's only available to humans, so you can't have software can't query it. So now that it's in the stat table, software has access to the reasons, and we've already implemented support for that. So now VitalSigns can query for the reasons. And if a Traveler server goes from green to yellow or yellow to red, we'll include in our alert message and on the dashboard why it was. So the fifth common problem with Traveler servers, and this is another one that's very difficult to detect, is when a given Traveler server is having trouble reaching a mail server on which the user's mail files is hosted. So if you go to the console and you type, show stat Traveler, you get several hundred of these things. And here in the middle, you'll see some statistics with the word histogram in the middle. And like a lot of IBM Domino statistics, what it is an incremental counter from the time that the server first started. So if I take a look at this one right here, the row that ends with the number 4, what it is saying is that this Traveler server needed to reach out to the DOM1 mail server to open up a database to get the user's mail file. And since the server started, 5 times when it did that, it took between 10 and 30 seconds to get the information. And here it's saying 4 times it took between 5 and 10 seconds, and 12 times it took between 2 and 5 seconds. And the good number is way up here at the top, which is between 0 and 1 second. So it took less than a second to get the user's mail file. That happened 12,580 times. Now, unfortunately, this is just a snapshot in time, and it just says, hey, this is all the things that have happened since I started. So I can't tell by looking at that particular number whether that problem with this server is happening now or whether that happened 2 weeks ago. The only way that you can really know is if you look at these numbers, write them down, and remember what the previous value was, and then query the server for those same stats a little bit later and check the increment. So if I check this 10 minutes from now and this number right here ending in 5 is still 5, then I know that that problem is not happening now. But if suddenly that number goes from 5 to 50, then I know that the Traveler server is having trouble talking to that particular mail server. Sorry, yeah. So it's virtually impossible for humans to do that, I think. The only way that kind of attention can possibly be paid is by software to do that. So I've got 9 possible problems that could go wrong with Traveler, but I'm not going to go through them all because of the interest of time. But I think you can see just from the ones that I've shown you already is that these tests are fairly labor intensive and they're awkward at best. So although they can be performed by humans, they really can't be performed by humans on a regular and consistent basis. So VitalSigns performs all of these tests and many more on a user-defined schedule. So basically what we do is you say, okay, here's my 10 Traveler servers. I want you to check them every 5 minutes or every 8 minutes, and we'll just run through all those tests and all the other tests. We'll query for the number of devices and the number of HTTP threads, and we'll do the math and see if you have enough threads, and we'll do all of this stuff. And if we detect any looming problem, we'll send out an alert to the right person. And all of that stuff is combined into our dashboard, and it's now highly available. And I believe that, and I'm super stoked that this is the industry-leading Traveler monitoring solution. So let me walk through some of those things. The first one, the problem that I identified, was having insufficient HTTP threads. Well, VitalSigns will do the math, put it in the dashboard, and put it as clear as can be. You either have sufficient HTTP threads, you have insufficient HTTP threads, or you're approaching the threshold where you will soon be out of HTTP threads. In terms of whether your Traveler server is running in resource constraint mode or not, we'll just query the server every time, put it in one of our columns in the dashboard here, and if it's a fail, that will send out an alert. And if it's a pass, and we just leave it alone, and then we just query it again the next time. You also actually have the option of taking a proactive step in the case of constraint mode. One of the lesser known features of VitalSigns is the fact that you can query any Domino server for any statistic and take action based on the number that you get back. So this was something that I thought of as I was putting this webinar together. The fact that you can query a Traveler server and say, hey, what is the current value of Traveler constrained state? And this kind of works as a greater than or lesser than. But since it's a binary number, we can just say if it's greater than 0, meaning it's 1, and that happens, let's say, 5 times in a row, because constraint can clear on its own, so you wouldn't want to have this, do that on the first instance. What action do you want it to take? And the action could be to send the remote console command, tell server restart. You can do this kind of thing for literally any statistic that Domino tracks. So that's super cool. The next thing, the third problem that I identified was the Traveler servlet. And what VitalSigns does is it just does a HTTP request. It passes a username password that you provided, and it queries that servlet that we showed where the users would be provisioning a new device, and it looks for the text in green that says Traveler is available. And if we find that, then we conclude that the servlet is okay. And if we don't, then that's another thing that would trigger an alert. Traveler.Status.State. This is a good one because Traveler can change states, and you don't necessarily know that unless you are querying the server asking for the state. So VitalSigns will do that for you, puts it in the grid, color codes it, yellow for yellow, red for red. You get it. It's cool. And now with the latest versions of Traveler, we also have the status reasons. So up until 2 weeks ago, if you moused over the status yellow, nothing would happen. Now you mouse over it and it'll say, hey, I'm yellow, and the reason I'm yellow is because my C drive has 7% disk free. And if you're not the kind of person that wants to just be looking at the dashboard all the time, you can also just have it proactively send you an email or a text message. And this one just came in today, conveniently. When something like that happens, we detect it, we send you a message, we'll tell you, hey, your Traveler server just went yellow, here's the reason why. So I'm super excited for that. We were asking IBM for that over and over, and now that it's accessible, we're just jumped on top of that. I think that's a very important thing to be on top of. The last one, the communication with the mail servers. What VitalSigns does is we look at these numbers, we remember the previous value, and we record the increment, and then we color code that on a nice dashboard. So you can quickly see If there are spikes in the boxes that would indicate that the requests to the servers are taking a long time, and depending on where the numbers are, we code, the low numbers. The low numbers being, 0 to 1 or 1 to 2. If we see that number going up, we conclude that's all good. If we see the numbers over here going up, then we conclude that's bad. That would trigger an alert, and you can see it and immediately make sense of it. So this is my reminder to stop talking and do a little demo. I've gone on for like 25 minutes now. I know we've got ideally 35 minutes and still have some time for some questions. So I'm giving it the bare essence here. So let me switch back to my browser. We were looking at the node health when we last looked. Let me switch over to the VitalSigns dashboard. The dashboard is where you would go to get the high-level status of how all your servers are doing. Up here, I can see I've got 2 that are down, 3 that are perfectly fine, 5 issues. And if I wanted to know where are my 5 issues, I can either click on this number up here and it would give me a list of just those servers, or I can look down here and I can see, what the distribution of the not responding are and so forth. We also have screens specifically for conveying certain information like disk health or cluster health, or in the case of today's topic, Traveler health. So let me go to that one. Here's the Traveler health dashboard. You can see right across the top here, super easy to make sense out of what's the status of the server, why is it yellow, why is it, if it's green, if it's red, the constraint test, making sure that it's continuing to sync. Another one of those ever-increasing statistics would be something like this. You'll see in the server task list that the Traveler task would say something like completed 5,498 device syncs. So in 5 minutes from now, we might expect it to say 5,515 device syncs. What we do is we record the increment, and then we put that in a nice intuitive graph here so that you can see over the course of the day, how many device syncs does it typically do, and where are the spikes and so forth. And because it relies on HTTP, we could do the same thing with the HTTP sessions. And as we scroll down further, we've got the grid that shows the health of all the different mail servers that the Traveler server is talking to. And because I am doing this on my MacBook, which is tied into my iPhone, I can go into my messages and you can see that I got a text just today telling me that my Traveler server was yellow, and the reason for that is drive C. You can also see that my bathroom door got locked and the kids got stuck in there. So that message also comes as an email. So in the middle of all this, I see, oh, there's an alert for Domino DOM1 Traveler status yellow. Boom, there it is. Now we have the status messages in there. That's super cool. Let's see, what else should I talk about? And another exciting thing would be the metrics about the mobile devices. So if I'm done looking at the Traveler health here, I can also go over to the key metrics and look at the mobile users, and this will show you the distribution of the devices. How many iPhones do you have? How many Androids do you have? What's the, we've got 5Ss and Galaxies and iPhone 6s and so forth. And here's the OSs that they're on. This stuff is very useful. For example, if you're doing a particular upgrade and it's going to affect a subset of users, we've seen that in the past. It says, this particular version of Traveler is not going to support, iOS 5 or lower. You want to see, well, do we have any of those devices or not out there? And if so, who are they? We can go into this grid right here, this mobile users grid, and see everybody and what they have. And you can do all kinds of filtering on that. You can export it out to Excel and do more stuff with it. We've just got so much stuff in here. It's just totally awesome. So there you go, Scott. I made it in 30 minutes.
That's pretty good. I'm impressed.
How are we doing on questions?
All right, we have a few questions queued up. If you're ready for a break
I don't want to
now,
waste
or
people's time. I want to get the core stuff and let people get back to their lunch or whatever they have.
excellent. Did you want me to run any poll questions today?
I forgot to prepare those today, but
Okay, not a problem. I mean, I still have a couple of
sure. If you
from our
have them handy,
discussion.
you can do them from we did the same webinar in Europe last week. You can run
Yes.
those. That's fine.
Yep. So I do have that. Let me just.
I think there's a question in the audience, Scott, also as well.
Yeah, there's a question coming from the audience, and we have a couple others here. So let's go right to that question. Says, now that IBM is rebranding Traveler as IBM Verse in the new releases, how does that affect VitalSigns in respect to the monitoring?
Oh man, first it was called Notes Traveler, and then it was IBM Traveler, then it was just Traveler. They've gone and they've done the same thing with same time, and actually
dead fish on white rice.
right. And actually, not to just pick on IBM, but Microsoft has just done the same thing. So, we've got, although I have it disabled for this demo, depending on what your environment is, you can have Exchange Health and Traveler Health, and we also have Link Health, which is the Microsoft instant messaging, which no sooner did we get that up and running and have all the pages done, and they decided to change the name from Link to Skype for Business. So it's something we're used to.
Yeah, that does happen. Perfect. So does VitalSigns modify the Traveler server?
No, it does not. In fact, it doesn't modify any of your Domino servers. So it's really just a client. The architecture of VitalSigns is that you get a physical machine or a VM somewhere, you put the Notes client on it, then you put our stuff on top of that, and you come into the configurator and you set up your password, and you tell it where Notes is, and pretty much any server that Notes client can connect to, we can monitor. And just like the Domino, the Notes client doesn't care whether your Domino server is AIX or Windows or what it is. VitalSigns doesn't care either. And looking at it in the other direction, the Domino servers are now 20 years optimized at managing multiple competing requests from hundreds or if not thousands of simultaneous users. So putting one more user on the network, which is the VitalSigns Notes ID, does not affect the servers in any measurable way.
Excellent, excellent. What, if any, plans do you have for monitoring Smart Cloud?
We've got a reasonable number of customers that are moving to Smart Cloud. So that's definitely on our radar. We don't have anything. I don't have anything I can show right now, but I know that the market has momentum for that, which I was not entirely expecting, I have to admit.
Yeah, I don't think many of us were expecting much of a push to Smart Cloud. Sorry, IBM.
We'll see what they call it next month, but
yeah.
Smart Cloud's a pretty good name.
Hey, they're getting better. It used to be what they'd throw 7 words on pieces of paper, and how they landed is what the name of the product was going to be that day. So great.
The Dropbox, which is literally 6 or 7 words, which I can't even remember it anymore. But
yeah, there you go. Great. Hey, I do have one poll that we do want to run here real quick for the audience. So your screen will go dark for a moment, at least for the rest of us. I'm going to launch this poll question.
Oh yeah.
Poll question is: how many Traveler servers are in your environment? 1 to 3, 3 to 5, or more than 5? Let's see where we're at with our audience today.
Without naming the customer, what is the client that we have? Not the name, but the number of the most Traveler servers we monitored in one go.
I think it was 50 Traveler servers.
50, yes, I believe it was 50.
Good deal. All right, so let me share the results of the poll here. Very interesting. So out of the audience, 75% of us are running 1 to 3 Traveler servers. And then the rest of us are running more than 5.
Both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, nothing in the middle there.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to hide that poll. We'll come back to seeing your screen. And let's run this one for fun. A couple of these for fun.
All right.
This one is, what segment of your environment will be in the cloud by the end of 2016?
Whether it's Smart Cloud or Office Cloud or Amazon Cloud or whatever.
Yeah, so it could be mail and apps, or everything or nothing.
If you're with a bank, just go ahead and check the nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. So very interesting audience here. Give us 2 more seconds here. Click a mouse or two. And I'm going to share the results. This one's very interesting as well. So only 8% of us say mail.
Yeah.
15% say mail and apps. Only 8% everything, and then 69% nothing. Which
that conflicts with Office 365 that says 100% of us will be migrating to that.
Of course they are.
I'm not going.
Resistance is futile, right?
My cold dead hands.
Yeah, there we go. All right, we'll hide this one, and we'll come back here. So great. Let's check. I'm checking for any additional questions here. Looks like, yeah, someone just asked, where's the option to say death to the cloud? Yeah, that's unfortunately not going to happen. Everybody's committed to the cloud. So there we go.
That, I just have some reports in the background because we also do some nice reports. So we have, Traveler CPU utilization, we have volume of device sync, and we can spit that all out into nice PDF documents. And,
perfect.
Like I said, more than I can show, but
yeah. And these reports are available to management, so that are they automatically given to management, so our technical guys don't have to stop their workday to generate a report?
They can be scheduled. Not all of them at the moment. We pretty much do that just on a customer, that asks, hey, I'd like to have this one scheduled. Okay, then we'll put that on the list and put that on the next release cycle. We're very responsive to customer requests.
Perfect. Great. And of course, alerts are customizable so that more than one person can get alerts, or specific types of alerts happen to different individuals.
Alerts are actually pretty awesome now. Alerts can go out either through email, through SMS. They can send SNMP traps. And you can limit them based on, recurring events. So for instance, you could say, I want to be alerted about CPU going over the threshold, but only if it does it, 5 times in an hour or something like that. And you can be very clear about who they go to and where they go to and when. And you can say, I want, specific hours. I want you to send a text on certain days for these certain servers for these specific alert types, and we can do escalation now. The alerting mechanism is now world class.
Excellent. That looks very good. And more of the Traveler server is just so vital to everyone's day now. Yeah. It needs to be up and running, and we need to know that it's running properly.
Yeah. So we have, alerts for Traveler insufficient threads and Traveler resource constraint and Servlet. I don't know why you would want to subscribe to some and not others, but you can. I mean, every alert, every test that we do, you can say, I want to hear about that or not. And actually, I can show one other thing, which is if I go into a detail of, so here's my Traveler server in the state of Traveler yellow. If I click on that, we also can show you what we call our health assessment. Actually, you can see why it's yellow, because that's the little sliver of available disk space that we have. The health assessment tab shows you, here are all the tests that we performed against the server, whether it was a pass or fail, and some details about why we made that assessment and when did we last do that.
Nice. All right. Great. Well, I think either you've totally impressed everyone, or they're just so shy they don't want to ask any more questions,
Okay.
or they're hungry. One of those three.
Cool. Well, there is, a lot more in it, and the point of a webinar is not to show you everything, but to get you interested enough to say, yes, I want to try that, or no, I don't want to try that. So if there's anybody out there that wants to try it, by all means, we'd love to work with you. We do free evals. We let you run it against your own servers for as many servers as you want to test, for as long as you need to do it to feel comfortable, and we hold your hand the whole way. Don't we, Jim?
Yes, we do. Yes, we will. All righty. I think we should wrap. And we should get on to their.
There we go. Well, I'll let you guys have the last word. Just remind them again how to contact you.
Surely. RPRVitalSigns.com is fine for the website, as is RPRWyatt.com. And of course, you can always reach us at 602-324-2942. Again, that number, 602-324-2942. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Alan, for the presentation. And thank you, everyone, for attending today. And hopefully we'll see everyone in Atlanta in August. And stay tuned for more webinars.
All right.
Okay. Have a great day, everybody.
Someone tell me how Atlanta got to the Midwest when they get there. All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, exactly. They succeeded. They went from the east, the southeast, to the Midwest.
All right.
Okay.
See you there.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.